In my opinion, the internet has to go down sometime in the next 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Cyber war, rogue AI, or infrastructure collapse. We've made our own golden calf, which is AI, and we're all worshiping this false god that knows all, sees all, and can tell us whatever we want. But the reality is it's more like a dog that can talk. Someone could put me in jail and I can still retain my sovereignty. My sovereignty is not a place I live in. It's a state of being that I exist in. That's what I would want to encourage anyone who's thinking about doing something revolutionary right now. If you're listening to this and you're building something, you're working on a project that will change the world, plan for decentralization.
Actually, I quite like to start talking about anonymity, actually. I've only ever had one other person on this pod who didn't want to be who didn't want to be known. And I asked them the same question. It's kind of like, because in this day and age, I think anonymity, I would say it's probably impossible. Someone somewhere can work out who you are. So what's the idea behind not being visible and not people not putting a face to a voice?
Yeah, part of it is anonymity. That's a big part. I like going to restaurants and not being harassed. I like going to conferences and not having everybody know who I am. So in that sense, the mask helps with that. But ultimately, the real reason that I wear the mask is because it doesn't matter who I am. Anybody can be doing what we're doing thanks to Bitcoin and the Bitcoin node network. I mean, anyone can run a node. The US government is running a node. And so while the mask helps with my privacy, ultimately, if someone wants to know who I am, they can figure that out pretty easily. But the message that the idea of free speech in a worldwide mesh network, that is something that does not depend upon any single person's identity. Everyone is building the mesh network.
Fair enough. I better set the scene for people that, I mean, like I've come in here not really understanding. I'm literally making this up as I go along, so bear with me. I'm not going to give too much away, but am I allowed to say which town we're in?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. We're in Austin, and we have a mutual friend who works with you, and he said, "Look, you should talk to these guys. What they're doing is quite incredible." And that's a green flag for me. I love interesting, unusual things. And now I've met you at this incredible location. It's a beautiful rural house which is basically set up for a community. I think that's the best way to put it. It's got all the ingredients for a good community. And I understand you've got a network of these places. Tell me what's going on here, please.
Sure. Yeah. So we want to build a worldwide mesh network with no single point of failure. And I realized very early on that the only way to do that was with a community. It can't just be one man. It can't be one woman. It can't be just a small group of people. In order to change the world, we would need many hands coming together as one. And so what we've done here is we've created a governance board that is decentralized. There's no ownership. There's only a responsibility. And then we have a private membership association that is a research laboratory for the technology that's building the next web. And we have 12 startups in the lab, as we call it, Lab 484. And these startups are all individually building different parts of the new internet that we're working on. And as those startups grow up and get bigger and get more mature and profitable, they move out into their own spaces. And so that's what this is. This is the Archipelago headquarters, where we're developing the Archipelago software, marketing it, and building a community around the mesh network.
And You better describe, you better give me a proper definition of mesh network then.
Yeah.
Because I think I know, but tell me what you think it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So a mesh network is an internet that has many different points of connection. If you think of your cell phone is the best example of a mesh network. You walk around downtown Austin and you don't think about it, but your phone is always connected. The problem is that mesh network is proprietary and you can be censored. If you don't pay your bill, you're no longer attached to the mesh network.
I see. All right. So what's the manifestation of it in terms of what I'd understand then? I mean, are you talking about decentralized protocols?
Yeah. And so most people aren't aware of the differences between open source software and proprietary software. And really all you need to know is that when you are using open source software, you are in full control and nobody can shut you out because you're sovereign. When you are interacting with proprietary software, it requires a contract and a user agreement, and that makes a contractual agreement between you and the third party that you're signing the user agreement with. And that makes a lot of liability for you and your data. And so the only way to build an internet with no single point of failure is to have it be open source, where you own the hardware, the software, and the data with no third parties or contracts between you and another company.
Do you know what's interesting? Total side note here, but talking to you now, I've realized how much emphasis I put on expressions when I'm speaking. Mm-hmm. I don't know what you're thinking. I don't know. It's a very interesting experience interviewing you, actually, because I've never done it before. The last guy I interviewed who was anonymous, I just didn't show the video, if you see what I mean. I didn't record him, but gosh, I use visual facial cues so much. I've just realized, but I'll adapt. Don't worry.
I'm just always smiling, so
okay.
No big deal. Yeah.
Right, Lab 484 then. Mm-hmm. And can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
It's so it's all basically tech startups. Is it software, hardware, or what is it?
Yeah, all of the above. In order to fix the internet, you can't just fix it with a new website or a new app or something of that nature. It needs to be a fundamental refactoring of the internet as we know it. And in order to do that, it's going to take a lot of moving parts and a lot of different technologies coming online at the exact same time.
And I take it they're all decentralized. They're all, Nostr, nodes, hardware, this kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. There is a wave of Web 5 technology coming, of sovereign technology.
Hold on a minute. Web 5, there's a new term. What's Web 5?
Yeah, so
I thought we were Web 2.
Just a quick recap. In the first Web 1, it was banks and data centers and universities compiling data and using that to synthesize information. In Web 2, we were given an identity on the internet. Before, you could only read information, but now in Web 2, you could actually write information. This would be Google, Uber, Facebook, anything we've used that requires a login or a sign up, right? The problem is we don't own our email address or our phone number that we use to access these platforms. And then they get all of our data. In Web 3, we now have the ability to actually own something on the web. Before, there was no ownership on the web in Web 2. In Web 3, we have private keys, and only you have those private keys. No one else has that. And so now we can actually build reputation in a sovereign way where we're not being tracked, but we actually own our digital footprint. Web 4 is mesh networks and IoT. There's a mesh network that Amazon is building, and it's called Amazon Sidewalk. And it's a proprietary mesh network. And if the internet were to go down, you could still access Amazon's services. But again, it's permissioned.
Can you, sorry, but
Sure.
to butt in there, can you explain that? What is Amazon Sidewalk? I've never heard that before.
So all of the Ring cameras all talk to each other, and it creates a mesh network that sidesteps the internet. And there's extra devices that they're going to be selling to people and giving to people to put on their windows and on the outside of their house, and it creates its own network for Amazon.
But how is it transmitted? How does the network, if it doesn't use internet rails, what's it using?
Radio, peer-to-peer, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. Yep, there's one house, every couple of feet, and all of those Ring doorbells can communicate directly with each other.
Which is essentially the same as, say, Bitchat, right?
That's right.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
So
Same theory.
Bitchat is the open source version. Amazon Sidewalk is the proprietary version. In one, you have the freedom to go anywhere and communicate with anyone. In the other, you can only do what Amazon will let you do.
I better mention what Bitchat is because I think it's awesome. Bitchat is essentially a peer-to-peer messaging service, which uses whatever route it can. So if I want to send you a message, instead of it beaming up onto the internet and then coming back down to you, we are directly connected through Wi-Fi, through Bluetooth, through whatever. And I can speak to someone in Australia essentially by hopping between people. It may take a trip up to a satellite at some point, but it tries not to. Is that roughly speaking what it is?
Yeah, exactly. It's peer-to-peer communication without a third party involved. So they can't see your messages, they can't censor you. It's the ultimate free speech tool.
And it's really only just started. And I've tried it. I've never actually managed to find anyone who I could speak to. Even at some conferences I've been to, I switch the app on and there's just no one using it. So it's obviously a struggle to get that kind of stuff going.
Yeah, decentralization is hard in every way, whether it's governance, whether it's technology, whether it's building a mesh network. In order to make something like a mesh network work, you ultimately have to have collaboration, communication, and coordination with the people that are your neighbors. It increases the fabric of society, whereas if you have a company that provides you the service, then you don't need to interact with your neighbors. You've got this contract with the company. The systems replace relationships.
So, okay, just to reaffirm, mesh networks are essentially peer-to-peer networks. It's a loose term for any peer-to-peer network. Is that right?
The main function is that you have connectivity wherever you are because there's always a node to connect to.
So it could still use the internet rails.
Yes, yeah.
But would it be safe to say that it would prefer to use decentralized rails, peer-to-peer?
That's the only way that we're going to have the internet in the future because of AI, quantum, and the way things are changing. Everything has to go open source, peer-to-peer, and decentralized.
We'll have to come back to AI and quantum because that's a massive topic. But I want to go back to Web 4,
Sure.
Web 5.
Yeah.
You were on Web 4, which is Internet of Things, mesh networks, and the proprietary version, Amazon Sidewalk. What's Web 5?
Web 5 is when you are running a Bitcoin node server in your house. And that's not mining. It's actually keeping a record of all of the transactions of Bitcoin. And Bitcoin itself is a mesh network on the internet of today. And what it needs is the ability to connect node to node, peer to peer, with no third parties involved.
Right. Now, so I have a Bitcoin node. I've been running a node. I built it myself many, many years ago. I've been running it at home, and I understand that side of it, that it's a network. The Bitcoin network is a separate network to your internet rails. What I don't understand is how that becomes the internet. Is there software already written that makes it possible to use the Bitcoin network as an internet, say?
Yes. It's not complete. It's about 80% complete. Bitcoin already gives us the routing and the identity of the node so that the nodes can connect to each other and communicate. And ultimately what we need is the ability to host websites on your Bitcoin node and have a replacement for the domain name service, the domain name system, the DNS. And so if we replace the DNS, which is the great bottleneck of the internet, then you have sovereign websites hosted on Bitcoin nodes that can never be turned off, never be censored, and always be available.
Wait a minute, I've just had a thought. My node at home uses the internet to connect to other nodes, though.
Yeah.
So what happens if, what does that use? Amazon AWS or something? Like what? I've never really thought about it before. But
Yeah. So let's explore that, because this is a really interesting thing. When I understood what a Bitcoin node was, not just what it is, but what it could be, that's what opened my mind up to how we could fix the internet. And Bitcoin gives us the solution. The Bitcoin protocol gives us everything that we need to be able to secure internet networks. And it's just untapped, underutilized.
But how does it work in the sense that it's not using the same rails as the internet? Like people often say, Amazon, most stuff happens on Amazon, Amazon Web Services, and if they go down, you can't do much.
We lose everything.
Right. So how do you? Are you talking about having Bitcoin nodes joined together in a mesh network?
That's right.
Right. Okay. I see what you mean now.
Peer-to-peer, just like Bitcoin. Bitcoin itself gives us the formula or the foundation to build upon. It's open source. It's fully decentralized. And the greatest threat to Bitcoin is the internet. If the internet goes down, your node won't sync. You can't spend your Bitcoin. It basically is relying on this broken internet that we currently have. But if all of the nodes could communicate to each other and route traffic peer-to-peer without using the DNS, without using the ISP internet service providers, then we have a sovereign money and a sovereign internet.
Wow. That's a very big idea when I think about it. And trying to implement that seems like an absolutely Herculean task. Not least because everyone needs to do it. So you're talking about you need Bitcoin nodes on all phones and things like that, really. Yeah. But what's the incentive for phone companies to do that, though? That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing. There is no incentive to give us more sovereignty from those companies. Right? Those companies do not have a reason to create a decentralized internet because everyone is happily paying $75 a month for internet access. Right? They're not laying any new cables. They're just charging people for access. And what we want is an internet for the people, by the people. What if the internet wasn't owned by anybody, but it worked for everybody?
This episode of the Free Cities podcast is brought to you by Veritas Villages. Now, Veritas Villages are freedom-oriented, energy self-sufficient luxury communities designed for people who want to enjoy peace of mind and real freedom in today's unpredictable world. Join a community of like-minded neighbours who value privacy and independence in a place where you can use Bitcoin, including for the purchase of your property. www.veritasvillages.com/free cities for more info, and in the meantime, enjoy the conversation. Would you be happy if it was only a small number of people that used that? Would you? I mean, it strikes me that there'd probably be a two-tier system. I think it's a great, something to aim for. It's a super in that sense. But when I think about most people, like you say, they don't really care.
Yeah.
But in a way, also the Achilles heel of that idea is that you need a lot of people involved for it to work, especially if you want it to be a real mesh network, because you need close, almost proximity with people and things like that.
Well, I would like to challenge that. I don't think we need mass adoption. We need more nodes, but we don't need everybody to run a node. Ultimately, if we look at history, some of the biggest changes in our history were caused by a very small group of people agreeing with each other on something. The Declaration of Independence only had 55 signatures. They didn't need to get everybody to sign that document. It just needed to start. And so the Web 5 internet, the internet built on top of of Bitcoin, we already have 25,000 nodes around the world. It is the largest open source nodal network on the planet. Tor, the onion routing service, that only has 6,000 nodes around the world. So Bitcoin without the internet is already 3 times bigger than Tor. When we add internet protocols and connectivity to Bitcoin, making a Web 5 internet, the incentives will take care of themselves.
Wow. I keep thinking about where I live and how I would even connect. I live on a very remote farm. Mm-hmm. It'd be difficult for me to create a mesh network there. It would definitely involve the internet from my...
Where's your nearest neighbor?
Quite a long way away. It's...
How many miles?
Oh, not miles. Probably half a mile.
If you have a mesh network internet antenna that is on the side of your house, you can get 1 gigabyte speeds for 5 miles.
What did you call that? A mesh network antenna.
That's right.
What are they called? Can you buy those just on Amazon?
You can, yeah.
What are they called?
So the popular brand is Ubiquity, and you can just buy those from Amazon. You can go to Best Buy and get them. They're widely available for large ranches, music festivals, stuff of that nature. And you can have 150 connections per antenna at 1 gigabyte speeds over 5 miles.
So it's for transmitting, not receiving?
Both.
Both?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, everything is a lot more at hand than people think. So you mentioned Bitchat earlier. Already the protocols exist for everything we need. Nostr exists, but it's all underutilized. It's not coordinated, and it doesn't have a community that's producing it until now.
Talking to the community, how important is the physical side of this? You've obviously, part of your plan here is a network of physical places as well.
Yeah.
And what's the theory behind that? Is that just bringing people together, or is that about creating the mesh networks, or what?
In order for us to fully be sovereign, we need a way to live entirely off of Bitcoin without depending on any third parties. And so while the mesh network requires servers and hardware and software, the people that will be using the network require food, housing, resources that are not digital, right? And so we need the developers to be able to build the software, and they need to be taken care of for them to be able to do a good job.
What's your opinion then on things like governance? Like, is it an important part of how this thing works, or and also, like, I've just by sort of meeting you and meeting a few people that are here in this big place we're here now, I call it a compound. That's actually quite a good way to describe it. I get the sense that you are what we would call an intentional community in that sense. You're not looking for any kind of independence or anything like that. It's a kind of parallel network it's a parallel network basically, but it doesn't seek to do anything except ignore the other network and just exist, if you see what I mean. Is that right?
Yeah, we're trying to live on a Bitcoin standard. And most people are living in a fiat standard. And when you come into these spaces, you can tell there's something different. Most people can't put their finger on it, but it's the Bitcoin mindset that makes the difference. And the Bitcoin communities that are building with the principles that Bitcoin gives us, they are decentralized. They are growing. They are moving into places that fiat used to control. And the unsustainability of fiat is opening more and more doors for the Bitcoin standard to grow.
Can you describe that network as from what you know, not just your own here, but the whole network? What is, I mean, I have, I'm an old Bitcoiner myself, so I know a lot of communities and a lot of people trying this out, and some more public than others. But what's your view of the landscape of that kind of self-sovereign individual living?
Well, just if we look at Bitcoin as a whole, Bitcoin is decentralized, which means a lot of people that don't like each other collaborating, cooperating to make something happen. And if you're using Bitcoin as money, then you're telling the world that you're willing to receive money from anybody that respects the Bitcoin protocol, right? As long as you're not attacking the protocol, I'm willing to trade with you. And so that basis, that spirit that's found in Bitcoin, when you apply that to a community, what you get is a lot of diversity. You get a lot of different cross disciplines and skills. You get a lot of talent. You get people who have their own reasons for building the product, for building what we're building. And that's really what we want, because it's easy to have a centralized form of governance where one guy, one team makes all the decisions. It's really hard to have decentralized governance. And that was the focus that we had from the beginning. I didn't feel like we could build this mesh network without figuring out governance for ourselves, because everything reproduces after its own kind.
I was just chatting to one of the other ladies here and about decentralized governance, and I told her, like I'll tell you now, and you're not going to like this, but I've lived in various different scenarios. I'm 54. I've lived in communes. I've lived in single houses. I've travelled extensively and I've lived in lots of different scenarios. And the sad thing is that what I realise, the one that really works is when someone at the top owns the physical place and has the vision and creates a set of rules and everyone else follows them.
That's right.
Yeah, but that's not decentralized, right?
No, it's not.
Right, but that's the one that I've had the most luck with, the most life, the most in opportunities. So, what do you think about that?
Well, let's look at Bitcoin as a community, right? Because that would be the most successful decentralized community in the world, and it's democracy without a leader. And so, when we set out to build the mesh network, the first thing that we did was get together all of the people who held the mission in their heart. And they were willing to do whatever it took to make this reality happen, because the alternative is a central bank digital currency dystopia that nobody wants to live in, right? And so if there's not an option available at that time when the CBDC gets here, then everyone is forced into the fiat standard. And so the people who are in the governance position on top of all of this, that's a group of about 40 people. And so we are decentralized from the very top. So whatever centralized entity exists within our ecosystem, an LLC, a C Corp, those entities themselves are centralized. There's one person's name on the LLC, on the C Corp. But the governance from the top is decentralized by 40 different people.
But what kind of decisions need to be made under that model, for example? What would be a day-to-day decision?
Yeah, so the sovereignty and autonomy of the startup is very much protected. But if there's something that the startup itself can't solve within itself, then that issue is moved further up into the governance board.
And what about the physical nodes and things like that? How are they? How do you decide what goes on here or what etc.?
That would be each individual organization making their own decisions on that.
But what about do they have their own space? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So the laboratory is where these startups are incubating, and then once they get mature and they have a team, they have an investor, they have everything they need to move forward, then they start looking for their own space.
And what are they?
Yeah,
what are
sure.
some of the startups? Give me some examples of
Sure.
what they're producing.
So ultimately, all of the startups are building different aspects of the decentralized internet that we've been talking about. Like I said, you can't just fix the internet with an app or a website. And so there are startups working on servers and Bitcoin nodes for food trucks. And
what?
Yeah,
Bitcoin node for food.
That's right.
Because they move around.
Well, not only that, but you need to be able to do off-grid Bitcoin payment processing. You need to be able to do invoicing and all of the things that BTC Pay server gives you. And so we've created a node that has internet connectivity all the time. You're able to order food off of the Bitcoin node website that's hosted on the Bitcoin node. And you're able to manage all of the operations of your food truck, ordering food, budgeting, forecasting how much food is going to be needed. And all of it is done in a sovereign way on your Bitcoin node.
And that's a bit of hardware and software as well.
And
it ships.
also a food truck with labor.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you create
right.
the food truck as well?
Yeah.
Blimey. That seems like a very specific application.
It is.
Why don't you just produce the node and then let food trucks have it? Wouldn't that be a better idea?
The problem is that this is a hard thing to figure out, and we have to actually perfect it before we sell it to other people. And we don't want to have people adopt the technology and then have it be too difficult for them to use or not be able to use it the way they thought it would be used. And so we're figuring out what's missing, what we have, what we yet need to build to make this a reality for that startup. Another startup is building tiny homes out of shipping containers that is using our Archipelago Bitcoin node server for home automation, home security, hosting of data on a private cloud. It has a private ChatGPT and a private Alexa all in one, and it's built into the home. And so you get all the benefits of a smart home, but it's actually a dumb home.
It's behind. Wow, that sounds like one of the big things that's one of the things I grapple with at the moment, especially because I use AI a lot now. is not telling. Like I used to be very careful about what I told Google, and all of a sudden, I've opened my life up to Claude and ChatGPT in quite an incredible way. I must admit it's just my business life, and in a sense, I don't really care. It's helping me run my business, but I never talked about it. I never let it dive into my sort of like private life, although it probably is just by dealing with me. However, that is something that is high on my list, is getting a sandboxed AI. What I've realized so far is I tried Maple. You know Maple? There's a kind of sandboxed one. It's kind of like using someone else's sandbox,
server, yeah.
Right? And I just found it wasn't giving me the results that Claude could, for example.
Sure.
So, but I get. Tell me if this is right. I get the feeling that pure sovereign AIs aren't quite as good yet as GPT 5 point whatever it is. And
Sure.
Is that right?
I would say it's correct looking at it from a 100-foot view, but ultimately I have an analogy that will kind of describe the state of AI right now. Some people, they like to cook and they make all their own food. And they know what ingredients are going in it. They're making the right portions. There's a lot of reasons you would want to cook for yourself. Some people are not good at cooking and they get fast food or they order from a restaurant. When you're using ChatGPT or something of that nature, it's like fast food. It's convenient. You don't have to do any cooking. It just works. Maybe it's not that good for you, but you get by. Self-hosted AI, open source AI, is actually something that requires you to cook a little bit. And some people are really turned off by that. And it's not worth the effort to have better ingredients, healthier food, or correct portions. And so while I might say that using AI that is centralized is typically better than self-hosted AI, you can make it better, but you have to actually do the work. You have to research the models, program the parameters, understand what your computer is doing. You have to do it yourself.
Tell me a good setup then.
Yeah.
I want to commit it to memory myself, because I remember when I first started building my node years ago, I had a sit down with a friend of mine who'd done it, and I said, look, tell me about this. Because it's very easy to want to do these things, but the actual nuts and bolts of it are what often stands between me and having a more self-sovereign life. For example, I've got a graphene phone. So have my kids. That thing, that's becoming much easier. It used to be quite difficult. Now it's really easy to put graphene on a Google phone. But the new one for me is the self-sovereign sandboxed AI that allows you to basically interact with an AI in an unfettered way without someone else knowing what you're doing, basically.
That's the only AI that I will use. I won't use ChatGPT, Claude, any of those. I have a server that has an AI Max chip from AMD.
So you better say what all these things are.
Yeah, sure. So it's an AMD chip, AI Max chip, and then it has 132 gigabytes of RAM. The machine costs about $3,500, and it's the top third AI machine on the market. So it's in the top 3, and it is a fantastic machine. I can load any AI that I want on it. There's over 950 models available, and you can have full control over the input, the output, the settings. My AI, my ChatGPT, will literally show me what it's thinking before it gives me the answer. So if it's already thinking in the wrong way, I can just stop the prompt and redo my prompt.
I didn't realize there were 950 models. I thought there were kind of 6 or so main ones. Is that not true?
Yeah, not true.
So what does that mean? Does that mean somebody... I don't really understand what an AI model is. It's just a massive bit of software, right? So presumably some people have open sourced AI models and now people are just tweaking them themselves. And you end up with 950 models. Is that right?
Essentially, it's like cryptocurrencies.
Right. Okay. So there's a base layer. Mm-hmm. There's the original Bitcoin protocol, which is how AIs do their thing, their prediction models or whatever. I don't know, and that everyone else is tweaking the edges of them, basically.
Exactly, based on their community needs or what they want the model to do or the data set. There's so many variables, which is why it's really important to test out all of the different open source models.
Right. So going back to what your setup. How do I do this? So that 3,500, is that the machine with the chip on it and everything?
Yep.
And what is it? Is it a like a stack, like a computer stack?
Yeah, it's a small box the size of like 2 ramen cups. It's very tiny, but it packs a lot of power. The company that makes it is Framework Computers, and it's the desktop version.
And then, and that's the hardware. And then what do you, where do you find a raw AI model? I don't, I've never...
Yeah, so it's actually on your Bitcoin node. If you have an Umbrel or a Start9 Bitcoin node, there is an application there that allows you to download the front end and the back end for your AI. Your listeners might not know what that means, but it's fine. We're going to get technical. We'll move past it. And then you can choose between the 950 AIs and a couple of different back-end protocols. And then you can create agents. I mean, everything now can be done on a Bitcoin node. That's really the main innovation of the last couple of years. Umbrel started in, I think, 2016, 2017. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they started first, and then Start9 came out. And those 2 Bitcoin node companies have really added a ton of features that makes running a Bitcoin node more compelling. It's no longer just about having more privacy with your Bitcoin transactions. There's now services and features with Nostr that really make the Bitcoin node worth it.
I don't understand what you mean by, my node is, it's an old Raspberry Blitz.
Raspberry Pi,
yeah. It's a Raspberry Pi and I have to flash the card every few months and it's a pain in the ass, but I built it myself out of pieces.
Yeah.
You're talking about nodes now which come fully packaged with, but what's the AI bit? I didn't understand that. What's the connection with it?
It's just an application that lives on your Bitcoin node. And that application allows you to run a personal AI as long as the hardware is up to date. I wouldn't try running an AI on your Raspberry Pi.
But your $3,500 thing, is that like a Start9 as well? Have you got your Bitcoin node on that as well? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so we're using that machine to test out the Archipelago software, the operating system. And
which is one you've invented yourself?
Yeah, that's one that we're building. It specifically allows you to have mesh network capability on your Bitcoin node, as well as having a private ChatGPT, a private cloud, and a private Alexa. And it's a one-button push. It's already configured, ready to go. We wanted to make it as easy as possible.
I was going to say
for
that
people.
Sounds like a joy. That's like your self-sovereign life, right?
That's right.
Yeah, but that's a real good hole in the market. I don't know whether any products exist already, but that would be something I would buy.
Right.
Which is a one-size-fits-all thing.
It's something that everyone will have to buy if they want to access the internet, because the internet that we have today is not safe. It was not built for 2026. The internet was built for the 90s. Right? And so there needs to be an update. The internet has no backup. If we lose the internet, there's not another way to communicate. Most people find their jobs on the internet. Most people eat off the internet with Uber Eats. Most people get their prescriptions and pay all of their bills on the internet. If we lose the internet, then we lose the fabric that's holding society together in many cases.
So how does it work then if you say you're using a mesh network from your Bitcoin? Well, I wouldn't call it your Bitcoin node. I'll call it this.
Yeah, your Bitcoin node.
Well, it is but it also is a lot of other things as well, right?
Well, yeah, but the backbone
is
of
the Bitcoin
those,
node.
Yeah,
okay, right. So you're using when you say you want to interact with Uber. How does that work? It still jumps onto the internet and connects to uber.com or whatever.
So if you have a house, the house has many doors to the outside. You can come in through any of those doors, right? That's kind of the way that Archipelago works, the server. You have the regular internet, you have Web 5, you have satellite, you have fiber. All of those different inputs are ways to access the internet. But as you said earlier, if Amazon goes down, you might still have internet access, but those websites are unavailable. The DNS can break and you can't go anywhere. And since you're not hosting those websites locally in your home, you have no way to access that information. If Google goes down, you lose all of your Google services, right? And so it's very convenient right now, and we've never seen an outage that was global, except for CrowdStrike and a couple of other things the last few years. But if there was a global outage, something like what happened in Iran when they turned the internet off, you would not have society as we know it.
So use that as an example, Iran turning the internet off. If a mesh network existed there, what rails would it be using if the internet was turned off? What would it be forced to use?
It would be using radio to communicate, and you can get 30 megabits a second using radio signals peer-to-peer from one server to the other without a Wi-Fi antenna. If you add an open source Wi-Fi router and the antenna, now you have connectivity for 5 miles, as we spoke about earlier. But there are so many different ways to communicate. We talked about Bitchat, there's Meshtastic, there's all kinds of technologies that have come about recently that give us the ability to have a fully decentralized internet. When the internet started, they had to take all of the switchboard operators, you used to call on hello operator.
They plug it in manually.
Yeah. They took all of that away and they put data center servers there. And the servers connect AT&T to Verizon to Google Fiber, and that's how the internet works currently. With just a few disruptions in those internet hubs, you could cause a blackout that would be across the country, because the internet was built on centralized third-party rails. It's not sovereign rails, right? It's not there's a third-party counterparty risk for every step of the internet.
So would radio be one of the prime ways of communicating if the internet as we know it goes down? I've never thought, I didn't even realize you could transmit stuff like data. Of course you can. I mean, that's what radio is, right?
Right. If it's good enough to play music in your car, it's good enough to send data miles away.
So that's incredible. And how does it work? Like, would in that example, let's use the kind of worst case scenario,
Sure.
right? The internet goes down. Can you go abroad still? Like, what would happen when you reach the edge of America or the edge of the UK? How does it jump the sea if it's more than 5 miles or whatever?
So there are many, many different ways to make that happen. Satellites are obviously a great way to send data to the other side of the world. Even if we're not, utilizing the internet service providers, there's still dark fiber that's under the oceans. It's fiber that's not being used by anybody. And you could put Bitcoin nodes on both sides, and now that fiber connection is able to transmit data from one content to the other.
But how do you do that? Is that something you have to do subversively?
Oh, we would have to purchase some
right.
dark fiber, but there's a lot of it for sale.
Is that right?
That's right.
Is that like a section of the big cable that runs under the Atlantic, for example?
Yeah,
you just lease it or something?
There's satellites that are for sale. You can buy satellites that already exist.
Funnily enough, I did an episode a couple of years ago with a space lawyer guy, and he told me you can stick a satellite into the sky for $1,000 now if you really want to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane that notion that I think I always thought that in the future personal satellites would be a massive deal, and I think he said the same thing, and he's literally teaches this stuff to students,
Yeah, and something that's surprising is Nostr is actually giving us the ability to build these mesh networks and still use some of the old architecture. With Nostr, for the listeners that aren't familiar, the real magic behind Nostr is that it takes an intelligent server that is 10 times more powerful than your computer, which is how it is now. Right now, you connect to the internet, you go visit a website, you have a small little computer, and there's a big, massive computer that's thinking way faster than your computer can think. So you are already at a deficit, right? Just logging on. You can't compute as fast as they can. And that's what we live in now. Smart server, dumb computer. With Nostr, all of the processing happens on your computer. And the server now becomes a dumb relay that's just moving information from one place to the other indiscriminately, right? That is how you fix the architecture of the internet. Because if you rent a satellite, you're like, oh, great, I'm sovereign. I can get data from one place to the other. But who owns that satellite? And what control do they have over it? With Nostr, you can put up a satellite. It has a Nostr relay, and it's just relaying data. It's not discriminating. There's no one with a power button on that. And so it is possible to reuse the old architecture for Web 5.
What do you think in terms of what's likely to happen? Do you think Nostr might be the protocol that does that? I mean, I use it. I mean, it's my network of choice now for social media, but still, it's very clunky still,
Oh, yeah. It's hard to use. Decentralization is hard.
So what do you think? Do you think Nostr's got a good chance for establishing itself?
I think it's too soon to tell with any of these technologies. Innovation is happening so fast, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen next. It's almost impossible to make a business plan longer than a few years because ChatGPT just came out a few years ago and it already feels old, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it does.
Yeah, it's happening too fast.
It is. how do I describe it? I mean, it's like a fatigue I've got from things moving too fast. I don't want them to move too fast. I get it. It's a good thing. It makes people more competitive. It makes people more productive. It makes people more have to fine tune what they do. But I'm kind of ready to do things at a nice slow pace. I'll be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
I think in a way, I mean, if I look at, say, take this podcast, it's a business, right? If I look at how AI has started operating within this business, it's probably 60% AI now, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean, but I do realize there's probably a limit to how much AI will basically run this business. Really, there's no need to keep innovating. I think there's a 0 to 90%, bit. The last 10%, I don't think it really matters a huge amount. And I really feel like I want to get to that point, because every time I think of a way that AI might be able to streamline what I'm doing, I just get, oh God, I've got to do all that again. I've got to tell it. I've got to try and design. I want a bit like your self-sovereign home, tiny home. Yep. I want that for podcasts, for example. This bit of a podcast will always exist, I hope. 2 people sitting opposite in a table. But what I want is to take that camera, these sound, give it to the AI, walk away, come back tomorrow, and it's produced a show notes, shorts for the internet, and it's doing all that. That bit, that would be my dream, but that seems incredibly complicated because I've tried disparate ways of doing that.
Sure.
And there's a few things, like the editing's getting better, but really I need an AI to take control in a sovereign way. Like I have a box with my AI on it. Even it would be great if it watched me for a couple of weeks running the show and then started doing it itself. I imagine that will happen in the future.
Yeah. But that's actually where it's going, right? Many business owners that I know, they're aware that if they're not using AI in their business, then they're not going to have a business. But they are very weary of feeding all of their business to some third-party AI who could very easily turn around and share it with a competitor. Or in the case of DoorDash, they could take all of your customers. If I'm a restaurant, a mom and pop shop, and I'm using DoorDash, I might get more sales for the first couple weeks. But if DoorDash decides to market another restaurant to all of my customers and give them a discount for going there, then I'm going to have a week where almost nobody shows up.
It's interesting, yeah.
Right?
Funnily enough, I've come across a version of that already in the governance space, which is that I've realized now, I've stopped using Google and I've started using AI for my knowledge and searches and stuff. And what you discover is when you ask an AI something, it's pretty good at working out the answer. If you ask it a very specific question, like if I said, show me the landscape of the alternative governance scene, right? But it has these glaring holes in its kind of methodology. It misses some major things. And when you say to it, right, show me your thought process here, you realize the problems, which you can actually back engineer. I've tried this. I've noticed that there's a lot about alternative governance that it missed. So I asked it to show me why it was coming to this conclusion. Then I went out into the real world and I re-engineered some websites, let it sort of percolate for a few weeks, then came back raw with a brand new chat on a brand new system. And then it starts noticing those things. So you can re-engineer it like that. But what I find a bit unsettling is when you ask it, what's a good pizza place? It gives you 3 examples of real life businesses. Now, how is it working that out? And who's telling it that this is a good business? When you look into it, often it just says, well, it says it's the best on the website. It says it's the best pizza place in downtown Austin. It's like, yeah, but that's their website. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think at least with a lot of Google, there was sort of rating involved, and there doesn't seem to be any of that with AI at the moment. And it seems to be getting quite a lot of stuff wrong. But more and more, because I notice myself, I'm using it to tell me stuff about the real world, and it's gatekeeping that information for me.
Yeah. And that's why having a model that's based on good data is so important.
What's good data? What is good data?
Well, you gave an example, like find a good pizza place. How does the AI determine that? The truth is we're not able to look at the AI and figure out how it got that answer. It's just synthesizing data in a black box.
But I mean, in the case of the one I gave you, I said to it, right, you need to show me your methodology here. And it did. And it showed that it basically put a lot of weight on peer-reviewed things.
Right.
So, for example, when it talked about alternative governments, it never would fall on places like this, even though this is a version of it, because it's too crazy, it's too out there. It would see what very common institutions are saying and use that as a starting point. And then, it's starting off on a foundation of a very limited amount of info. And it doesn't look back in hindsight. It just moves on from that point. That's what I've noticed.
Well, also, what if the owner of the pizza place is, brothers with someone that works at OpenAI?
Sure, yeah. I mean,
right? How do you know the AI is telling you the truth when you ask it to show you how it got to that answer?
Well, you would hope it would be checking like reviews on DoorDash or something, but it doesn't. It often, and also I know it always, Claude references an internet from a little while ago. It takes a while for it to, and when you ask it, when are you going to get an updated version of this? It's looking at an old web page and it keeps saying, no, it says this. And I'm like, dude, I'm looking at the real one now. So you're being gatekept here.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really hard to trust an AI because they can change it. You might be using Claude for 6 years and all of a sudden they change it and it doesn't remember any of the data you trained it on. It doesn't remember who you are or any of the things it used to know. When they moved from ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4, people were online saying like, they killed my friend.
The other thing that I've noticed, because I built some web applications recently with Claude, and I saw something on Nostr this morning. Actually, I was sitting in the taxi on the way here. Someone had designed a whole project over 6 months using Claude, and it worked. It did what it was supposed to, and he gave it to a real life developer to sort of take a look. And he said it was the most ridiculous form of coding you would ever do. Yeah. You can't change one thing without breaking the whole thing. And I found the same thing when even designing a website. It could solve individual problems, but it didn't do it in an efficient way. It needed me, and I have very limited abilities. It needed me to say, well, is that a good idea? Why are we complicating that? And I obviously that's going to get better. You would imagine that's going to get better. But at the moment, big problem.
It could also get worse because once you have AI generated code and there's something wrong, how is the developer going to fix it? They're going to go back to AI and try to regenerate the fix, which it just keeps getting sloppier and sloppier. And that's where a lot of the big tech companies are at right now. They've been using AI. Their developers are using AI. And things are getting worse and worse and breaking more and more. Look at Copilot, right?
Why? What about Copilot?
Oh, just Microsoft. I think the majority of their code base right now is being written by Copilot. And that's why every couple days you see these news articles like, thousands of laptops bricked by new update. And
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you code then, personally?
I have a self-hosted AI that I've been working with and training, and it helps me out. And instead of it making everything, I just ask it about specific functions. But I'm actually the one who's working, right? I don't want to outsource my brain to the AI because you don't really get it back once you start doing that. It used to be that doctors would search with their eyes for what was going on, and now they just ask ChatGPT, 1 second, bro. They type in the parameters and then they give you the results. And so as we're relying on AI more and more, we're thinking less and less. I actually have limited my AI use to really specific use cases. I don't want it to run my day. I'm not looking for an agent to answer my text messages. There's a lot of ideas out there that one person can run an entire business using a whole bunch of AI agents. And I think that the AI can help us make things more efficient, but it can't do what we do. We are the most advanced technological computers in the world. We have wetware instead of hardware. 1 cubic inch of our brain has more processing power than any computer in the world.
So, I mean, my opinion on that would be sure, but in the end, I mean, even if it's 1,000 years in the future, you have to expect that synthetic that technology actually does outperform us, right? Am I wrong there?
I think it has limitations just like we have limitations.
What would they be, for example, then?
So AI has figured out how to program light particles with data so that it can send data into interstellar places at the speed of light. Obviously, we're reaching a point where anything that we want to know can be known. But as we learn more and more, we realize how much we don't know. And I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we don't have any more questions. I think they're just going to get bigger and bigger. And eventually, the limitations of AI will reveal themselves because AI can only make decisions based on data. And we don't have all the data. We haven't been collecting verifiable data for thousands of years, right?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so the AI might be able to synthesize data, but because it doesn't have the whole picture, it has these limitations. I can have it write me a poem faster than I can write a poem, but ultimately it's not going to figure out the secrets of the universe. I think that's something that only we have the capacity to do. I could be wrong.
Well, no, I mean, I've had a couple of AI discussions on this pod, one of them in particular, which went very, very deep. And I think my conclusion was that the limitation of AI is the spiritual experience like that we have. And if you think about the future, what makes humans unique, it might be the spiritual experience. And in fact, often people say, well, what jobs are going to exist in the future? Because AI is going to outcompete everything. But then you start thinking, well, people might start putting, especially if we end up in a place of abundance, people might start placing more emphasis on the spiritual experience. Because if abundance exists and we're not striving for things in the same sense that we are now, I mean, let's face it, most people are striving for a certain amount of monetary power. And if that was to disappear slowly, which theoretically it would, because robots will build robots and they'll get cheaper and cheaper, that everything will trend to the marginal cost of zero, possibly in many cases. What are you left with as a human? And what you are possibly left with is the spiritual journey. And AI will not be able to, it will be able to mimic it, but it won't be able to tread on new frontiers there, presumably. I mean, that's purely based. I mean, that's based on the fact, that the phase, who knows, AI might have a spiritual element to it. I don't really know. I don't really know how that works, but
yeah, I mean, does God want to talk to AI? That's really the question, right? I see AI as being something that humanity has created. It's a form of creation. It has limitations. And part of the AI psychosis that I think everyone is experiencing is we just assume the AI is right. People are not questioning what they get from the AI. It's almost like in some ways we've made our own golden calf, which is AI, and we're all worshiping this false god that knows all, sees all, and can tell us whatever we want. But the reality is it's more like a dog that can talk.
Even in the future?
I can't predict the future, but right now...
I agree with you there, because it says some really ridiculous things with complete authority.
Oh yeah,
and doesn't mind, and never says sorry when it's wrong either. It just says something different. Oh, you're correct. Yeah. It really does. It never says anything unauthoritatively either. If you ask it a question, it'll never say, "Do you know what? I'm not 100% sure, but my hedge would be this." It just tells you that thing. But once you get used to that, it gets a lot easier to deal with, in my experience. But I would say theoretically, because it could have access to the hive mind of humanity, it would be better at making decisions on the running of society, on the run. You know, I think. I mean, I don't really know.
The problem is it's not accountable, right?
What do you mean?
So if the AI makes a mistake and ruins somebody's life, sends someone to jail who's innocent because they matched the facial recognition, there's no accountability there. You can't reason with it. It doesn't have the ability to feel remorse or compassion. It's not able to take in all of the data. I mean, many times I've looked at data and came to a conclusion that I was very sure and confident about. The AI does the exact same thing. It doesn't have the full story, and neither do we. Humans have our own limitations. We can only see things that are so big. We can only see things that are so small. We can only see into the future so far and into the past. We really have no idea what's outside of those limitations.
I agree with you there, which is why possibly the spiritual realm might be the new frontier for the human experience, because the day-to-day stuff, the things we pride ourselves on, I'm a plumber, I'm a I'm a podcaster, I'm a whatever, they will quite easily become outcompeted by humanoid technology. The spiritual experience, though, I don't know. What do you think about the future of the human experience when you track it into the future? What's going to, for example, in your case, what's going to keep you ticking? What's going to get you up in the morning?
Ultimately, when I look at the future, I see either the greatest dystopia we've ever seen or the greatest solarpunk future that we could imagine. And they're probably going to exist at the exact same time. Just like right now, there's places with very little freedom and places with a ton of freedom. And so I think the technology that we adopt now is going to set the future of humanity. Either everyone has an identity that they own fully and they control that identity and they're able to build reputation in a sovereign way where they're not being tracked, but they're actually taking their data and putting it into different buckets, if you will. This is my work identity. This is my job number 2. This is my home life. This is my children's life. And when I take them to, soccer events and stuff like that, like we need different buckets for our identity. And if we have that, if we own our digital footprint, then we have the basis for security, privacy, freedom of speech, self-expression. If we don't have that, if we have an identity that's owned by a government or a bank and they're tracking us and attributing things to us and using analytics to determine our future, then we basically lose all sovereignty. At any time, any moment, people's free wills could be violated by autonomous decisions made by a central authority that limits your ability to freely express yourself.
I would say my prediction would be that both will exist.
Yeah.
So how would you personally, taking that as a proviso that that's probably the likely outcome, is both systems exist alongside each other.
Yeah.
How would you navigate the physical world when one side of it is completely gate kept by algorithms? For example, you want to get the train somewhere, you want to drive your car somewhere, you want to walk somewhere possibly as well. But the computer says no in the real world.
You've eaten too much meat this month. Right. Sorry, you can't drive.
But how do you operate if you decide to adopt a self-sovereign life? How do you operate in that world? Do you just have to get as far away from it as you can, or what?
No, I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution is you need to have a network. There's power in numbers. And the Bitcoin node network is really an analogy for us. All of us are nodes in the network. And the nodes that we associate and share information and communicate with, that is our strength. And that's going to be what builds society when the internet goes down. If we have the ability to communicate outside of the internet, then we don't lose our sovereignty when the thing that everyone's depending on goes away. And that's really the key, or the focus for me, is I want everyone to be able to be in control of their own destiny. And the only way to do that is to give people digital sovereignty. What Bitcoin did for money, Web 5 is going to do for the internet.
But what about the literal physical world? What about when you walk outside of this compound and there's cameras on every corner that is monitoring you, and you can't go beyond this little geofenced area for some reason?
That's the thing. Once we're at that point, it's too late.
You think so?
This has to be something that happens before the CBDC is implemented, because the only way they'll control people is if they have full control of your identity and your money and your data. That's the triple threat. If you own your own identity and you're in full control over it, and you have sovereign money that's open source, and you're owning and holding all of your own data, it's like property. In America, they're very big on owning property because it's the basis of a free society. Digital real estate is property, and either you own it or someone else does. And they're either using that against you or you're using it to direct your path.
So there is a point of no return, according to you, though, in the dystopian
digital ID. That's it. For me, the line in the sand is digital ID.
Gosh, because we're having that issue in Europe at the moment, in the UK. Yeah. Digital ID keeps popping up, and as far as I can tell, it will happen. Yeah. And there's no stopping it. I don't see a way to stop it. My strategy has become, not that it's a line in the sand for me, but that it's a line to sort of like opt out, but it's a line in the sand to make me go, right, now put plan B into action. Yeah. But really the best plan B I can think of is going somewhere where digital ID doesn't exist. But you could predict that it's all going to exist everywhere.
Well, that's the thing. It's going to exist everywhere. So what you need is a network of individuals that is willing to trade, communicate, and work together to provide everything that the digital ID is going to provide you.
But don't we end up just being a little subculture then of people? And then like you say, in the end, we reach that point where the other world is so gatekept and so ubiquitous that it becomes impossible to work, to live within it unless you adopt it. And the only option then is to go live out in the woods like a mountain man.
I think about this all the time. What happens when AI consolidates everything and centralizes everything? And I tried to think of a historical precedent where there was that much centralized control in the world. And the only thing that I could draw on was the Tower of Babel from the Bible. Because if you read that story, regardless of what anyone thinks about the Bible, there's a story where there's an evil king and he enslaves everybody in the world to build this tower. It's like the clearest picture of centralization that we have. And apparently, according to the Bible story, this makes God so angry that God decides to step in with a supernatural miracle. And what God decided to do, according to the story, is change all of the languages of the people that were speaking so that people could not understand each other, except if they found someone else that spoke the same language, then they did. And what happened was the moment the language changed and no one could speak to each other, the king would tell his guard, hey, go kill those people. And the guard was like, what? What do you want me to do? I can't hear you, right? And it broke the power structure. It broke the centralization. It broke the single individual holding all the power, and now the power was distributed amongst many people. We now have a new Tower of Babel. It's called the internet. It's one language of computer code that controls everyone around the world. Doesn't matter what culture you are, how old you are, how much of a celebrity you are. All of the things that we pride ourselves in don't matter when you're a number on a computer. And who owns those computers? It's just a few people at the top, right? And so if this plays out the same way that it did, then what we need is to change the language of all of the computer networks so that they can't talk to each other unless they're permissioned. I only want to associate with people that share my destiny. And when I meet people that have a shared destiny with me, I would like to link our Bitcoin nodes together so we can stay in touch. And we keep out everybody else from our network. Because if they had access to it like they do now, then you could just crawl the internet and get everyone's data and then use AI to decide the future of humanity. But if they can't do that, if they can't crawl the internet and get all of our data and use that against us, then their power, just like the evil king in the Bible, is limited.
It sounds like a great parable, but I think the part that is unsettling is you said it took a supernatural intervention. You're talking about humans, though. We're talking here about humans intervening.
Yeah.
And my experience of being a human and being amongst humans is the majority of humans probably wouldn't intervene. I think we had a great example of that during the pandemic. Most people did the worst things.
Of course.
And it was horrible to watch. It was so disappointing. Maybe something supernatural might step in. I don't know.
Well,
maybe.
I mean, we have Bitcoin.
Is that supernatural?
It can't be recreated.
True.
The unique conditions in which Bitcoin was created, there can never be another Bitcoin, because if you tried to launch another version of Bitcoin, the miners would just eat your chain. And so there's no way to do that a second time. For me, it does feel miraculous. When I understood Bitcoin for the first time in 2016, I felt like this was the first opportunity I was given to actually make a change in the world, because there was no other option. There was no plan B. There was the government. There was the banks. I had to get an ID to get a bank account, to get a job, right? We're already living in a CBDC world. So the miracles, I believe, are actually the only way that we're going to get through. Just like you mentioned a little bit earlier, that the spiritual realm is really going to be the new frontier once AI gets, fully integrated.
Well, it is potentially the place that technology, well, who knows actually? Who knows whether technology can manipulate the spiritual realm? I'm not even sure I know what it is, to be perfectly honest. I do know that I do believe a number of things about Bitcoin, which are probably in alignment with you, in the sense that the Bitcoin protocol offers you and this is the wrong word, a kind of ideology to align yourself with, which gives good characteristics to a human.
And that's why the only way to build a worldwide mesh network with no single point of failure is to build it on the backbone of Bitcoin, because where Bitcoin is going, that's where this mesh network is going.
I would agree with that. Like I say, the Achilles heel is the human condition. Who wants that? And if you look at the liberty movement in the world, it's a very small percentage of people, really.
But that's all it takes. Christ only had 12 people and changed the course of history. So it doesn't take a lot. Big things have small beginnings.
Do I agree with that or not? Give me another example, a real world example of some massive change.
King Leonidas and the 300.
But give me something that isn't come from a very old book. Anyone could have. I don't know whether it really happened.
Lab 484 in Austin, Texas.
Right, go on. But how much of an effect is it having so far, though?
Well, we're still early.
You reckon? Well, I think that goes without saying.
Yeah.
But all right, we're early, okay, and I agree. When I hear what you're saying, I love all these ideas.
Sure.
The problem is I see CBDCs rising much faster and in a much more impressive way than I see. For example, you're the first. I mean, no, I've talked about mesh networks with people before, but it's at the fringe. It's at the edges, and I definitely class you as being at the edge, along with most people who I associate with this kind of world. I don't see it filtering. I don't see it as a large movement. Maybe you do. Maybe. I mean, I know
the U.S. government just announced in Congress 2 or 3 days ago that they are running a Bitcoin node, and they're experimenting with the Bitcoin protocol to secure computer networks.
Is that right?
I would say this is now mainstream, but people just don't know about it yet.
How do they secure networks?
So imagine that you are logging into your email, and when you log into your email, it costs you 1 Satoshi every time you log into your email. You wouldn't even feel it. It wouldn't affect you at all, right? Now, if someone was trying to hack into your email, they would need like $75,000 in Bitcoin to be able to do it. And that's how you can secure networks with the Bitcoin protocol. You put a toll for people to pay before the data is sent.
Why hasn't someone done that already?
Probably because it would increase the freedom and sovereignty of everyone and prevent big tech from being able to crawl the internet.
No, but someone like Jack Dorsey or someone, why doesn't he come up with an email package that requires 1 sat?
I cannot wait to meet Jack and ask him, because he built the Web 5 protocols.
Go on, go into that. What are the actual Web 5 protocols then?
Yeah,
what are they called?
So the first one would be decentralized web nodes, and we find that with Bitcoin. We have that with Bitcoin.
But wait a minute, that's Bitcoin. He didn't write Bitcoin.
No, but for Web 5, one aspect of that is to have a node to be able to run Web 5, and we believe the Bitcoin node is the best node to use for that.
But what's Jack Dorsey's connection with Bitcoin nodes though?
Well, he created the 5 protocols that make up Web 5, and the first one is a decentralized web node. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Is that well known? I didn't realize that.
Probably none of this is well known. The whole show has been not well known information, but yeah, he also made verifiable credentials, decentralized identifiers, Web 5 wallets and browsers, and progressive web apps. And so those 5 protocols make up the Web 5 stack that we use to rebuild the internet with.
And it's all designed to work on Bitcoin nodes?
It's all designed to work on a nodal network.
Okay, any node or network.
Jack, I'm not sure what his thoughts were, if it was going to be Bitcoin or not. The team that he hired there was debate there over how it would be implemented, but to us it was clear. We needed the largest open source nodal network to rebuild the internet on, and Bitcoin is the largest open source nodal network on Earth.
How does Nostr fit into that though? Because Nostr's a nodal network.
Nostr runs on Bitcoin nodes. You can get a computer and put Nostr on the computer, and now it's a Nostr node. But don't you want to zap and send payments? So then you'll end up running Bitcoin software anyway. it's kind of inseparable. They're kind of blended together now.
So all of this, what ties all of this tech together is spending, is value transfer, really.
Well, also data ownership, actually being able to host your own data, and then have verifiable credentials that link back to the Bitcoin blockchain as a third ledger bookkeeping, essentially. So the Bitcoin blockchain, we want to use that as a new DNS. Instead of you paying a company like GoDaddy for a domain name, you'll simply register your domain name on the Bitcoin blockchain. And when you pay the fee, it's the fee for the transaction. And one Bitcoin transaction can validate 10,000 domain names all at once. So it's like a domain name is the block, and then there's subdomains within that block. And that's how you can have a fully decentralized domain name system that can't be censored and can't ever go down.
And can you have repeatable domain names in that sense, or is it only a one-off?
One-off, yeah. First come, first serve.
What would they look like? What would
most likely a .btc. Oh. So Polycarp Nakamoto .btc.
God, I don't know any of this stuff. By the way, do you need to have a drink of water? I did hear your voice getting a bit croaky.
Sure.
Just look away while you do it, so I don't have to cut this.
No worries.
Yeah.
We'll have to cut this.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'll make a cut though.
Cool. Yeah. Ooh. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Great chat.
Yeah, it's good. But I want to keep going if you don't mind.
Me too. Yeah.
I just heard your voice getting a bit croaky. I thought maybe you should.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. This coffee is awesome, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drop a black screen over this while we do it. So,
okay.
So rather than
cut it.
Yeah, it's annoying. Well, because I have an audio version and a physical and a video version. It means I have to cut both of them separately, basically, because I have an intro that I record, and so
yeah.
No, I was just going to mention the coffee here because I've never had butter coffee with cinnamon before, and it's amazing. Thank you for that. It's a whole new. Is that good?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we were at. There's a load of stuff about Bitcoin that I don't know.
There's a lot of stuff about Bitcoin that nobody knows. I mean, it's most likely because we don't have Bitcoiners that are really digging deep into the protocol. Bitcoin itself is still very small. We're not mainstream yet. People might have heard of Bitcoin, but the understanding of Bitcoin is really missing from the public.
Tell me something else about Bitcoin that I don't know then. Or I probably don't know. I know quite a lot about Bitcoin. I've been an avid follower for many years.
Many people don't know that with protocols and implementations like Fedimint, we now have off-grid Bitcoin. Bitcoin that can be spent even with no internet access.
Is that the same? I use a Cashu wallet, funnily enough. It's
exactly.
the same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
Tell me how this works, because Cashu is amazing. Cashu allows me to spend Bitcoin with you, peer-to-peer, over Bluetooth, with no connection to the Bitcoin network at all.
Yeah.
How does it work?
In order to mint something like Cashu, you have to have a node. So it all goes back to the Bitcoin node again. And you essentially create a warehouse receipt for Bitcoin. And if people don't know what a warehouse receipt is, that is a tangible piece of paper that shows how much of the asset you own in the warehouse. Like, let's say it's gold, right? You would be given a receipt for the gold, and that receipt is as good as cash because whoever comes to the warehouse holding that receipt can get the gold. And so you can spend that. I can give it to you. You can give it to someone else in exchange for goods and services. And eventually somebody will bring that warehouse receipt back to the warehouse.
What I don't understand, though, I understand that theory. I don't understand how you spend bits of it though. How is that monitored? How much of it? Like it's like an abstraction of Bitcoin. So
Sure.
say I took a Bitcoin out and took a receipt for 1 Bitcoin, but I spend 500,000 sats with you. How does the network know who spent what with who if it's not connecting to some kind of...
Well, that's the beauty of it. Your Bitcoin node is holding the Bitcoin, and then it mints the Cashu warehouse receipt, and then you get to spend the receipt that's on your phone with a friend. That friend is now holding that receipt in their wallet on their phone, and then when they go to cash that out, it goes from your node to their wallet.
Right. So it's the single, that node, and this is obviously one of the downsides to it.
Yeah.
That node that took the original receipt is a central point of failure, or whatever you want to call it.
Well, at least you know who you can trust and who you can't, and you know the person, right? So it's something where if someone is being dishonest, they're being dishonest with such a small amount of Bitcoin that you don't really care. And you know who it is that stole your money.
In my case, I don't actually know who it is, but I'm using my wallet. One of the wallets I use has you trust the mint, let's say, and the mint is the people who run the wallet, but I trust them, and I don't mind trusting them.
Well, and also this now gives us the ability to do things with Bitcoin that we could not do before. So as an example, we are creating, along with some other open source developers around the world, the ability to send data with a payment of Bitcoin along with the data. And so if I send you an email, it costs me a fraction of a penny in Satoshis. But when you get the email and you open it, you get the Satoshis. And eCash, like Cashu or Fedimint, that's what gives us the ability to build that network, because everyone will be sending data to each other. And as it's hopping from one Bitcoin node to the other, it's dropping little bits of eCash along the way. So by putting up this antenna, you actually have the ability to get passive income from your node. Your node is transferring, relaying data down the street, and you're collecting a little fee in eCash. And then once you cash that out, you get the Bitcoin, or you can just keep it in your eCash wallet. And as you're browsing the internet, you're now sending that off to somebody else.
I must admit, back in the day when I first had my node going, I was relaying transactions for about a year and a half. But in the end, it became so difficult on the Lightning Network.
Yeah.
Rebalancing channels, all that kind of stuff was horrendous. I just stopped. I just use it to sign my own transactions.
And eCash is so much easier, so much better.
And that might be an incentive to get the network up and running as well, because there's a...
That's right.
Yeah.
If I'm trying to make the most amount of value with my Bitcoin node, I will put my Bitcoin node in a place where there's not a lot of nodes, and now my node becomes a heavily used highway to other nodes.
It all sounds great, but like I say, I just can't stop thinking about the fact that probably not many people are going to do this.
But think about this. Imagine if the internet went down.
Right, tomorrow.
How fast are people going to adopt this tech?
Well, they need to know about it first.
Well, they're going to know about it when there's Bitcoiners walking down the street talking on the phone and everyone else's phones are dead.
I suppose, but how long is the internet going to go down for? Plus, is the internet going to go down?
Probably 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Tell me about that. What do you mean?
So, in my opinion, the internet has to go down sometime in the next 5 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Cyber war, rogue AI, or infrastructure collapse.
5 years?
Sure. Give or take. And it will coincide conveniently with the central bank digital currency. Because when the internet goes down and the masses are screaming for a solution, the solution will be a new internet that's safe and secure. And all you have to do is scan your face every time you make a post. because they're going to have to regulate AI somehow. And with all the deep fakes and all the scams, and especially if we have a quantum event or some super AI that's able to hack into all kinds of networks, we're going to hit a breaking limit. The internet is already at a breaking limit. One update from CrowdStrike will just shut down all the airports. One mistake from the DNS and all of Amazon goes down. One mistake with Cloudflare and the majority of websites go down.
Which we've had. That's actually happened.
And we've had it for small amounts of time. But if this was something that was a threat, like cyber war or rogue AI, they're going to have to turn it off for some amount of time. And if everyone's phones are not sovereign, not open source, they don't have the ability to put whatever software they want on their devices, then those devices are going to be bricks.
Makes me think about the physical node network, as in of places.
That's right.
Right. And where are you at with things like self-sufficiency and power self-sufficiency and food self-sufficiency, that kind of stuff?
Every community has these challenges of how do you feed people, how do you handle disagreements with people, how do you make money, right? It took us a little while to figure out the solutions to some of these issues. We haven't figured everything out. We're not perfect. That's what makes us a laboratory. We're experimenting with different ways to do governance, to do voting, to manage society. But we have figured out a couple of things. And ultimately what it comes down to is with sovereignty comes responsibility. Everyone needs to be responsible for themselves. And those who are producing are given more, and those who are not able to produce are not given more to work with.
Getting hungry there.
Just a little bit hungry, yep.
They're not feeding you well here.
It's the coffee, really. The cinnamon did the trick. So with that being said, you need to be able to manage your community in a way that gives everyone the ability to achieve their dream as well. And I think that that's what we really miss when we try to do community or business, is there's one guy that has a dream and everyone is sacrificing their dream for that dream. You know, the salary is a bribe for you to not fulfill your dreams, right? And so we're either working on our own accord in our sovereign way, or we're working for somebody. And with the fiat system, it forces more and more people to work for other people. It doesn't increase the sovereignty with your money slowly melting away in your hands. It actually increases insecurity, it increases dependence. And I feel like people are more dependent now than ever before. Everyone needs energy independence, they need food sovereignty, and they need open source money to be able to create a community or an ecosystem that can withstand the challenges of human drama.
Here's my anecdotal problem with some of that. I've moved, my family, we've moved to a farm in the last few years, with land and opportunities galore. And we have a polytunnel with a bit of some stuff growing in it, and we have some animals, but there's no way we would be able to be self-sufficient, because it's literally more than a full-time job for two adults to do.
And this is why you need a community.
Correct. We do, and there is a community, but once again, it's still, my community is a farming community. Currently, I'm probably the only Bitcoiner within a 25-mile radius. Sure. You know what I mean? Yep. Actually, no, there is one other one. Sorry. But once again, I see a massive uphill struggle there. And also, I do think of myself as wanting to be self-sovereign, and I have the intention to be self-sovereign, but the ability to grow your own food takes up so much of your time, you can't do anything else at all.
Sure.
Even running a small, we've got a polytunnel the size of this room. That's a full-time job. You can't have a job and grow food in a polytunnel as well. You know what I mean by polytunnel?
Yeah. And that's where the network effects come in. So you're familiar with eBay and PayPal.
Sure.
Why did eBay become the king of the auction sites?
Don't know. Branding, maybe? I don't know.
One network effect. They had one network effect which made eBay so sticky that no one else ever used any other form of auction site. And that's PayPal. They had a relationship with PayPal, right? And so network effects, I believe, are the key to being able to be sovereign and be in community. Because you don't have a network without community. You're just a node. Like you said, you're the only Bitcoiner out there, right? So you're the only node out there. There's no other nodes there yet. So you're really lacking network effects. We have a whole bunch of nodes here in Austin, Texas, but not a lot of farmland. But there is a garden out there growing food. We're doing what we can. We're not fully self-sufficient, but we have enough independence and sovereignty where we can get by, and we're making the mesh network communications needed for any type of disaster, which means people will be trading with us a lot. And those network effects, the trade, the communication, the circulation of energy, that's what every community needs.
Yes, 100%. It's a struggle, though. I think when I think of my own scenario, the big barrier is Bitcoin, because so many people have wrong opinions and impressions and ideas about it. And you say the word Bitcoin, even in this day and age with the biggest ETF in history and governments stacking Bitcoin and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Most people still think it's for buying drugs on the internet. And in all honesty, that's true. You know?
And that's a feature, not a bug. Right now, if you meet a Bitcoiner, there's a high likelihood that you're going to get along with them.
Sure, yeah, I use that all the time.
Right? And so it's actually a really good filter.
It's why I'm sitting here talking to you now.
Yeah.
Because another Bitcoiner I know said, go and meet this guy at this time on the other side of the world. And here I am.
And so the network effect is affecting right here, right now. Right? And if you are able to stack network effects, then you become incredibly sticky and very hard to just your work, your proof of work can't be undone, like the Bitcoin blockchain. And Bitcoin has 7 network effects. That's why no other cryptocurrency is ever going to dethrone Bitcoin as the king. It has speculators, it has the miners, it has the node runners, it has the app makers. I can go on and on and on. But all of these network effects keep Bitcoin in the position that's in. And it will also keep us in the position that we're in. Because everyone is working on a open source protocol which rewards you based on the amount of work that you put in. In the game of Monopoly, everyone is playing, but only one person is going to win. And in the board game of Bitcoin, everyone who's contributing gets out exactly what they put in. That's a real difference in how you build society, how you structure community, how you value people.
Do you think it's important to stay under the radar a bit? And I mean physically here, like how many people know this place exists and who is it? Too many. But this is something we talk about a fair bit on this podcast. When you're starting alternative societies, let's say, a very good strategy is to just not tell anyone. In fact, it's one of the best strategies. but it only works in certain scenarios, and I would call that the intentional community end of the spectrum. Buying some land in the middle of nowhere, setting up a community and just living is a great way to live the life you want to live, and mainly because just nobody knows what's going on. However, when they find out, you're a sitting target sometimes. So what's the deal with your network of physical places?
Yeah, so when we operate in a location, we're not looking to build a fiat brand. We're not looking to grow and then we need more money, and then we grow and then we need more money. That whole methodology is a fiat mindset, right? The investors are looking for you to raise even more money next time, so they give you a lot of money now, so it's guaranteed that you're going to need 10x, a year from now. Instead, the Bitcoiner mindset is very different, right? There's a low time preference. We're not in a rush, right? We're following the 4-year cycle that Bitcoin gives us as a monetary policy. And that monetary policy is set for 110 years into the future. I can actually make decisions for my life based on the monetary policy of Bitcoin, which never changes. And that type of standard gives me the ability to create things, express myself, and to really live the life I want to live. And I think it can be done anywhere. I don't think I need to go out into the middle of the woods and do it there. I think it can be done in the middle of the city. It could be done at your house. It could be done in a warehouse. It can be wherever the people are.
What about, though, I agree with the low time preference ideology, but how does that fit in with CBDs are coming fast?
Right, yeah. Well, that's the thing. The best money goes where it's treated best. And there's a competition between Bitcoin and the central bank digital currency. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think AI is going to want the better money over the not so great money. And I don't think that there's any way to stop the Bitcoin standard from becoming the standard. But it won't be the standard if we're not building the network.
I have often recently started thinking that maybe, because you've been thinking about mass adoption for years, and AI does present one of the best examples of how it could actually occur very, very quickly. I'm undecided. I don't know. What do you? I presume you think that could be the event.
I think AI is great, but ultimately you just need to look at the data. There are 8 billion people, 2.5 billion bank accounts. Everything that you and I have ever known about the economy is just 25% of the population of the world being represented. The banks don't have the ability to sign on 5 billion people in a month or in years or in 10 years. They have to validate everyone's identity. They have to deal with fraud. They are the centralized third party with the counterparty risk of having to verify all this and manage everyone's money. Bitcoin could be adopted overnight by the entire world because there's, I think last time I checked, like 9 billion phones in existence and like countless laptops and computers. All of these devices are gateways to a Swiss bank account that anyone can own. And so I think the value of Bitcoin will overshadow all of the economies we've ever known quicker because the adoption can happen overnight.
Something that's been floating in the Bitcoin news recently, which everyone seems to be getting, well, not everyone, a lot of people seem to be getting very upset about, is this kind of threat of quantum computing. What's your take on it as a techie person in this space?
I'm a mesh network guy. I'm not a quantum computer guy, so I really can't speak too deeply on the subject. I'm mostly just going to parrot what I've heard other people say. But that being said, I don't think quantum is the risk. I'm not afraid of quantum. It's going to break things, but I think AI is going to break things much, much faster. and the CBDC is the real risk. And they may use quantum or AI to justify the need for a CBDC.
It's funny. It was a few years ago. You know that meme of the
Yeah,
the
I know
guy
the meme.
right? Okay, you know what I'm about to say.
Yep.
And it's like it always has been. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
Right? I remember memeing that about 4 years ago, which was it's about CBDCs, and the guy's going always has been.
Always has been.
And I think when it comes down to it, that is the battle, and that was the point of everything. When you look at the evolution of Bitcoin and why it came around and where we're at now, I think the final boss is Bitcoin CBDC, and that's always been
the case.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to have a harder time getting people to adopt the CBDC than we are going to have getting people to adopt Bitcoin.
How so? I get the sense that it'd be very easy. This is how I see it unfolding. Here's a wallet, government CBDC wallet. They've got two strategies. One is you have to pay your taxes with it, or two is here's $150 worth of free money, and 75% of the country is going to just take it because it's free money.
Yeah.
You know, I see it that it'd be very easy for people to sign up, and then in tandem, you close down the on and off ramps to Bitcoin from the CBDC.
Sure.
And therefore, you've just created a two-tier society. You either pay with CBDC or you
don't exist.
Or well, you can exist, but on a Bitcoin standard. But that's already a problem, because when you follow that timeline, you end up with physical gatekeeping, the kind that you might see in certain parts of China at the moment, where you can't buy a ticket for the train because you need a CBDC.
Unless you have a mesh network with no gatekeeping.
Sure.
And then Bitcoin actually becomes something that can rival the CBDC.
Sure, I agree with that. The question is, I think that requires a level of the state collapsing under the weight of itself.
And that's inevitable.
You think? So possibly in your timeline, Bitcoin's the phoenix that comes out from the flames.
I don't think I need to do anything to accelerate the fall of the systems that we currently have. I think that the CBDC is their plan for when the system can no longer go forward. And that includes turning off the internet, everyone being totally dependent upon whatever solution the government offers, and it's going to be a CBDC. If they turn off the internet and Web 5 just explodes overnight, because everyone who's running an Archipelago server already understands how to set them up, and having an Archipelago server allows you to make copies on your USB stick that you can go around and make every other computer into a mesh network node and deploy them to all your friends. Now you're all communicating to each other. That's going to happen.
Just to reaffirm, Archipelago is one of your startups.
That's the operating system that we developed. It's a Bitcoin node operating system. It's open source. Has it's based off Linux, but it has 4 things. It gives you the mesh network capabilities. It gives you a private AI, private version of Alexa, and a private Google Cloud. And so what you can do is you can download all of the websites that you like to visit, all the movies, media, everything, stuff on Nostr. And it's available for anyone that's connected to your network, to your node.
And is that open source and available now?
It is.
So you can. What's the GitHub folder?
It's not ready for people to download. We're testing it out right now, but it's built and it exists. And very soon we'll be putting it up on our own private server for people to download.
Right. We better talk. We'll wrap it up soon, but let's talk about the future then. Give me some timelines that will excite me. Things like what you're producing, what you're doing, what your plans are, even what the plans for the network of physical locations, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So,
and also another thing, which I haven't really talked about, is how do other people get involved in this? I mean, it wasn't easy to make contact with you, and I was only introduced to this whole network through another anon on the internet kind of thing, who listens to this podcast basically. So how does your average person get involved in this? Someone who's just like listening to this going, that sounds interesting. And I'm in the States, or I'm in the Austin area, and I'm.
So we have lots and lots of events every month that people can come to. And if they come to our events, our live events, there's many different ways for them to get plugged into the ecosystem. If they want to reach out to us, we have a website that we'll give you the link to. You can put it in the show notes, and they can schedule a call and we can get to know each other. Some of these podcasts that we've been on have been the greatest signal for people to follow, like the bat signal. Also, there's a divine connection between these people that we meet who really get involved in a deep way. It seems to me that God also wants the mesh network to be built and is actually giving us favor and providing us with the nodes to connect to, if that makes sense. I look at every single person as a Bitcoin node. They are holding data in their mind. They have a form of processing power and talent. They're like an AI. We're like walking, talking AIs. And everyone has something to contribute to the internet of the future. That's really the thing. There are people that meet us and they see what we're working on. They think it's cool and they support it. Great. But then there's people that meet us and they feel like they found a missing piece to their destiny. It's a natural thing. It's not contrived. It's voluntary, just like Bitcoin.
And what about, like I say, in the show notes, there'll be a way to get in touch.
That's right.
What about future plans and timelines ahead and how you see this whole thing unfolding?
We're looking to either start laboratories in places that don't have them yet or partner with node runners who already have working laboratories, in their own location. Recently, we met a good friend that lives in France, and now that he's visited us and we've gotten to know him, our nodes, if you will, are connected. And now we're communicating, sharing ideas, and supporting one another. That's how it works. It's your node connects to mine, and then we share. That's a network effect.
How do you care much for the other well-known Bitcoin nodes, as in more mainstream? Like Nashville, like the circular economies that are popping up all around the world.
Because Bitcoin is,
Park, kind of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because Bitcoin is decentralized, there is a space for everybody in their own self-expression, and there's lots of Bitcoiners I like. There's lots of Bitcoiners I don't like. And that is a sign of decentralization. It should be that way.
Fair enough.
There's Bitcoiners that like me. There's Bitcoiners that don't like me. And I'm thankful for that.
So the plan going forwards is the network increasing in size physically and obviously, and is the main reason for it the incubation of new technology as well, or is it more about a kind of? I mean, I see you as like I said earlier, I see you as an intentional community, a decentralized intentional community. You're like a network state, but with real physical locations.
Well, that's the thing. If we can't do it with 3 or 4 locations in a populated city, then we definitely can't do the network state in rural areas. And right, like we need it to work on a small scale before we deploy it large scale. And my biggest problem with all of these network state meetups and the people who are working in these different types of charter cities organizations is they're not building a network. There's not a physical aspect to the ideas that they're.
Well, that's not strictly true. I mean, for example, I just lived in Próspera for a year, for a month, not a year. I've just come here from Próspera, which is essentially a charter city with physical location and with people coming and going. As far as their network goes, your barrier to entry for a network, I would say, is much lower because you just need one property and you could rent it and you could start one. Próspera is slightly different. The process of getting to Próspera was 12 years, plus legal, plus a change of a constitution, plus building. It's a very long process. But their plan has always been to be a network of places. I mean, whether there's much overlap between you and them, it's very hard to say. Like I say,
well, that's the thing though, is they should be different from us, and we should be connected. True,
but what I think separates projects like yourself and Próspera is degrees of autonomy. I see you entering into the intentional community situation without necessarily thinking you want some autonomy, recognized autonomy. The whole point of somewhere like Próspera is to do a deal with the people in charge to get autonomy. It's not the right or wrong way, nor is yours the right or wrong way. It's a different way of doing it. And when I look at the whole spectrum of free cities, as I would say, but they're not necessarily cities, but it's about freedom really and living.
It's an idea.
Yeah, it's about a spectrum of sovereignty. Yeah. And at one end are people just amassing together and creating a society and staying under the radar more often than not. At the other end is places like somewhere like Liberland, which is a bit of land in Serbia and Croatia, which no one's claiming. So they're putting a flag down and saying, we belong here. We are self-sovereign. We have if you want to deal with us, you have to come, we don't need you to recognize us. This is ours, and there's a spectrum in between.
Totally.
And they're all valid, and they're all about the market of living together.
But let me ask you, if you are building a new city and you're using Google as your office suite, are you really sovereign? If you are building a city and all of the communications run on the regular fiat rails, are you actually building something that's truly autonomous and sovereign, if it can, right? Like that's kind of.
No, I do agree with you. I think the difference is that I think I am in your world really as well. I love the idea of self-sovereignty. However, most people are happy with degrees of sovereignty.
Sure.
I'm a bit of an absolutist like you. I don't like the idea that I'm not completely self-sovereign, even though in lots of aspects of my life I'm not. But I don't like it. But your average person that's building Próspera, and this goes for many things, is it even 1% freer than what we've already got? Right. Even that's better. Right. There's degrees of this. If you and I would probably hedge, as my bet would be, is this freer than what was here before? And if it's true, then it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. You're working in the right direction. And does it have to be absolute? No, it doesn't.
Well, I would agree with you. It's a spectrum, right? But being a Bitcoiner is a spectrum. Some Bitcoiners use Coinbase, some don't. What I would say is our tech is agnostic to how you want to run your city or your network state or anything like that. But our tech will increase the sovereignty of any city that adopts it. That's really our goal. We're not here to judge this project or that project. We love Próspera. We love charter cities and all of that. But if they themselves are not using sovereign tech, then there's an Achilles heel in the sovereignty of that city. And that's what I'm hoping Web 5 solves for everybody.
Interestingly, with regards to what you're saying there, I would have said the Achilles heel of Próspera was government shutting them down, and they've just survived that in the most extreme way. So in one sense, and this is different from what you're saying here, the legal protection was what saved them in the end, really. They basically changed the constitution of a country, or they didn't. The constitution was changed. They then used that to create legal frameworks, which meant that when the socialists came in to shut them down, they couldn't. And it seems to have worked which is quite incredible, really. I mean, the thing about this space of alternative governance is that there are very few working models, especially at that end of the spectrum. You get a lot of intentional communities. I think I've lived in intentional communities when I was younger, and just groups of people coming together and not even really taking it that seriously necessarily. But they are the easiest place to start. You get a group of friends and you buy some land or you rent some land and you live on it and you do your thing. Where at the other end of the spectrum, though, that's when it becomes difficult. That's when you're dealing with the beast. You're negotiating. I think your strategy, from what I can see, it's the Bitcoin strategy. It's not try and negotiate with that side. It's just ignore them and build something else. And
it's not even something that's opposed to what's already here. It's just better. It just makes the old thing obsolete. One more thing I want to add. We're talking about sovereignty, and I thought about this a lot. Ultimately, there's only one sovereignty that really matters. And that's the mental individual sovereignty. Because someone could put me in jail and I can still retain my sovereignty. My sovereignty is not a place I live in. It's a state of being that I exist in. It's the expression of my free will. So when it comes to the technology that we're building, we want to not create a standard for other people to follow. We simply want to create technology that respects the sovereignty of the individual. And we feel that the ripple effects of that will make everybody more sovereign, no matter where they are on the spectrum. But if they're not mentally, spiritually, within themselves already sovereign, then there's no amount of sovereignty you can add to somebody for that.
Okay, before we go then, when do you think we'll be able to, I might be able to tinker with what was it called?
Archipelago?
Archipelago, yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you a copy today to take with you. It's ready for testing. The operating system has been built. We're just figuring out the bugs and getting it ready for mass adoption, which we think will happen soon.
And what hardware would I need?
With Archipelago, you can run it on an old laptop. You can run it on a brand new $3,000 AI server. The functions and the abilities that the Bitcoin node will have will vary depending on the hardware. So if you want to use the mesh network ability, no problem. You've got that. If you want to use AI, if it's not powerful enough of a computer, that part will be grayed out. You just won't be able to use it.
And just quickly as well, for someone who wants to get a self-sovereign AI, what's the cheapest, most efficient option? Do you have to spend $3,500 to do it?
What are you using the AI for? If someone's using it for word processing, yeah, you can get away with something for $1,500. If you're trying to get a recreation of ChatGPT, you need to get the big one.
Right. So you need to be spending about $3,500 for a piece of hardware, and then the rest of it doesn't cost you a thing.
Yeah. Well, Linux is free if you don't value your time.
I've heard people say that a lot.
It's true.
It is true.
That's why people pay us to program their Linux devices.
Yeah. Right, Polly. Thank you. Great conversation, mate.
This has been fun.
I'm really interested in what's going on here, and you mentioned we could go and see some of the other places. I'd love to do that. Yeah, it's great. I really like what you've got going here, and I think it's inspiring. I don't know. I'm not sold on. I think it's way ahead of its time. The Bitcoin stuff, the living together bit. I love it. I think if I was in Austin, this place is incredible. I would be in a place like this myself. The Bitcoin stuff, I just, having been around for a while, I think it's a slow and long process. But maybe AI is the thing that kicks it up the butt and gets it.
Well, I mean, they're printing more money. It's only a matter of time before hyperinflation sets in, and then Bitcoin really starts to shine. But I'd like to leave your listeners with one last thing. I want to encourage everybody to plan for decentralization. People ask me all the time, Polly, what's the one thing that people can do to move the needle for Web 5? And I tell them that What they need to do is remove the centralization from their hearts. That is the only thing that will change the future. And if you think about building a utopia, let's just pretend one of these charter cities starts up and it becomes wildly successful, and it's literally a utopia. If it doesn't fall apart from within with human drama and the humanity and that whole thing, then it's going to be attacked from the outside and plundered. I can't think of anywhere that you can build on the earth where eventually it's not going to get swept away, right? So if you're not planning for decentralization, then you're going to have a beginning and an end. If you are planning for decentralization, when hardship comes, you break into two. You split into three. Every time the hammer hits the table, there's now 2, 3, 4 of you. And that's really the model that Bitcoin gives us. The more that Bitcoin is attacked because of its decentralization, not only does it withstand it, but it actually grows. And that's what I would want to encourage anyone who's thinking about doing something revolutionary right now. If you're listening to this and you're building something, you're working on a project that will change the world, plan for decentralization. No matter how good you make it, there will be something that comes to sweep it away. But if it's easily decentralized, easily replicatable, if anyone can do it, just like Bitcoin, downloading some software, running it on a computer, then it won't ever go away.
Perfect. That's the title of this episode as well, Plan for Decentralization. Thank you, Polly. Nice to meet you.
You as well.
And looking forward to seeing what else you've got going on here. But thanks very much for inviting me here. And
Absolutely.
Great.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This is one of my favorite podcasts that I've done. So thank you.